Mom, that's the same bird. The words were small, innocent, and barely louder than the cheerful noise drifting across the elementary school courtyard. But the moment those three little girls pointed toward the tattoo on a stranger's arm, everything changed. The annual spring fundraiser at Maple Creek Elementary had drawn nearly every family in the neighborhood. Folding tables lined the basketball court. Red, white, and blue streamers fluttered in the warm Colorado breeze. Children raced between booths carrying cotton candy and lemonade, while parents laughed beneath the bright afternoon sun. It looked like the kind of day people remembered for simple reasons. No one expected it to become unforgettable. Ryan Mercer stood quietly near the edge of the playground, helping his 11-year-old daughter, Chloe, carry a cardboard box filled with raffle tickets. Like always, he stayed out of the spotlight. His faded denim shirt was rolled up at the sleeves because of the heat, exposing part of a dark tattoo on his forearm. Most people never noticed it. Ryan preferred it that way. He was the kind of man others overlooked without meaning to. He drove an aging pickup truck. He worked long hours maintaining industrial equipment outside Denver. He rarely talked about himself. He smiled politely, helped when asked, and went home to his daughter every evening. For Ryan, that was enough. Across the courtyard, a sleek black SUV had just arrived. Conversations shifted almost immediately. Natalie Brooks stepped out, elegant as always in a tailored white dress that seemed untouched by the dust and chaos of a school event. As CEO of Brooks Dynamics, she was one of the most recognizable business leaders in Colorado. Yet despite her success, the most important part of her life walked beside her. Three little girls, Emma, Lucy, and Ava. The sisters rushed ahead excitedly, their laughter ringing across the playground. Natalie followed with a smile that appeared practiced but sincere. Most people saw confidence when they looked at her. Few noticed the loneliness she carried behind it. "Look, lemonade," Lucy shouted. "And face painting," Emma added. Ava stopped suddenly. "Wait." Her small voice caused her sisters to stop too. All three girls stared across the courtyard. Ryan had just reached for another box, and sunlight briefly illuminated the tattoo on his arm. Ava pointed first. Emma's eyes widened. Lucy gasped. "Mom," Emma whispered. "Mom, look." Natalie turned casually at first. Then she froze. The paper coffee cup slipped from her fingers and hit the pavement. Coffee splashed across the concrete. No one moved. No one spoke. The girls were still pointing. "That's the same bird," Lucy said softly. Natalie's heartbeat seemed to stop. 15 years. 15 years since she had seen that symbol. 15 years since a memory she tried desperately to bury became the reason she woke up in tears more nights than anyone knew. The eagle design was unmistakable. The shape, the wings, the details. She knew it. She remembered it. And suddenly, standing under the bright Colorado sun surrounded by children's laughter and spring decorations, Natalie Brooks felt tears gathering in her eyes. Across the courtyard, Ryan Mercer looked up, unaware that three little girls had just changed the course of his life. Ryan Mercer had spent years becoming invisible. While people at the school fundraiser gathered around Natalie Brooks after the accident with the coffee cup, he simply bent down, picked up an empty cardboard box, and continued helping Chloe organize raffle tickets. He had noticed the commotion. Anyone would have. But he had no idea it had anything to do with him. That was the strange thing about Ryan. He never assumed he was the center of anyone's attention. Life had taught him not to. Chloe looked up from the table. "Dad, I think that lady is staring at you." Ryan glanced across the courtyard for less than a second before returning to his work. "Maybe she is looking at somebody behind me." Chloe laughed. "There is nobody behind you." Ryan smiled faintly. "Then maybe she likes raffle tickets." That was how he handled most things. A quiet joke. A calm answer. No drama. No complaints. The spring breeze drifted through the schoolyard carrying the smell of grilled burgers and fresh-cut grass. Children shouted near the bounce house. A country song played softly through outdoor speakers. Around him, families looked complete. Mothers and fathers stood together taking pictures. Grandparents sat beneath white tents sharing stories. Ryan noticed those things sometimes. Not with bitterness, just awareness. 6 years had passed since he lost his wife, Emily. The pain no longer arrived like a storm. Now it came quietly, like a familiar song playing from another room. Some days he could smile without thinking about it. Other days he still reached for memories that were no longer there. Through it all, Chloe had become his reason to keep moving forward. Every overtime shift, every early morning, every sacrifice, it was always for her. Dad, Chloe handed him a stack of tickets. You missed one. Good catch. You always miss one. That is because I have job security. She rolled her eyes dramatically. Ryan laughed. The sound surprised even him. Nearby, several parents watched him interact with his daughter. Most knew him only as the maintenance technician who fixed equipment around town. Some assumed he struggled financially. Others thought he was simply quiet. None of them knew much more than that. Ryan preferred it that way. The fewer questions people asked, the easier life felt. The tattoo on his arm was usually hidden beneath long sleeves. Today was unusually warm for April, nearly 78 degrees, and he had rolled them up without much thought. To him, it was just ink. A reminder of people he respected. A reminder of promises made long ago. Nothing more. Across the courtyard, Natalie stood frozen beneath the shade of a large maple tree. Emma, Lucy, and Ava continued asking questions she barely heard. Mom, how do you know that symbol? Emma asked. Have you seen it before? Lucy added. Ava tugged gently on her mother's hand. Natalie swallowed hard. Her eyes never left Ryan. The years seemed to blur together. Boardrooms, business deals, awards, headlines. None of them mattered in that moment. Because standing less than 50 yards away was a man who looked completely ordinary. A man carrying boxes and helping his daughter. A man nobody seemed to notice. Yet something deep inside her whispered a truth she was almost afraid to believe. Sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones the world learns to overlook. Natalie Brooks had built an empire by trusting facts instead of feelings. For more than a decade, that philosophy had guided every decision she made. Investors trusted her judgment. Employees respected her leadership. Competitors feared her discipline. Yet standing beneath the old maple tree outside Maple Creek Elementary, she felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Uncertainty. Emma looked up at her mother. Mom, who is he? Natalie blinked slowly. I do not know, she answered. The words surprised even her. Because part of her felt as if she should know him. Part of her felt as if she had known him for years. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the leaves overhead, casting shifting patterns across the grass. Children continued laughing. Parents continued talking. Life moved normally around them. But inside Natalie, old memories were beginning to stir. 15 years earlier, before the magazine covers, before the boardrooms, before Brooks Dynamics became a household name, she had been a very different person. Young, ambitious, determined to prove herself. Yet despite all her success since then, one memory had never faded. A symbol, an eagle, not a corporate logo, not a sports team emblem, something else, something tied to a moment that changed her life forever. She had searched for answers more than once over the years. Quietly, privately. Whenever a lead appeared, it disappeared again. Eventually she stopped looking. At least that was what she told herself. Mom. Ava tugged gently at her sleeve. Why are you crying? Natalie quickly touched beneath her eye. She had not even realized a tear had escaped. I am okay, sweetheart. But she was not okay. Because the man across the courtyard did not fit the image she had carried in her mind all these years. He looked ordinary, comfortable in the background, completely unaware that anyone was watching him. Ryan handed Chloe another raffle box. The girl smiled and said something that made him laugh again. Natalie noticed the way his attention stayed focused on his daughter. She noticed the patience in his expression, the kindness, the quiet confidence. There was no need to impress anyone, no need to dominate a room. He seemed perfectly content being exactly where he was. That alone fascinated her. Most people spent their lives trying to be noticed. Ryan Mercer seemed to spend his trying not to be. Nearby, a group of parents gathered around Natalie. Congratulations on the new expansion project, one father said. The company is doing incredible things. Another mother smiled. My husband talks about your interviews all the time. Natalie responded politely. She had done this thousands of times before. Smile. Thank them. Be gracious. Yet her eyes kept drifting back toward the same person. Eventually the conversation ended. The crowd moved on. Natalie exhaled slowly. Then she made a decision. Girls, she said softly. 3 faces turned toward her. Would you like to help me with something? Emma grinned immediately. Is it a mystery? Natalie glanced once more toward Ryan. For the first time in many years, she found herself hoping for an answer. Yes, she said quietly. I think it might be. Emma Brooks took her new assignment more seriously than most adults approach their jobs. The moment Natalie called it a mystery, all three sisters became completely focused. What do we do first? Lucy asked. Observe, Natalie replied. Ava smiled. That sounds like detective work. Natalie managed a small laugh. That is because it is. Across the courtyard, Ryan and Chloe had moved to a booth selling homemade cookies. The afternoon crowd continued flowing around them. Nobody paid much attention to the quiet father and daughter. Yet from a picnic table nearly 30 feet away, three curious girls were watching every move. He does not seem mysterious, Emma whispered. Exactly, Lucy answered. That makes him mysterious. Ava nodded as if that made perfect sense. Natalie sat quietly behind them, pretending to check messages on her phone. In reality, she was studying Ryan more carefully than she had studied any business proposal in years. She watched the way he spoke to people. Every conversation was brief, respectful, uncomplicated. He thanked volunteers, helped carry supplies, picked up trash someone else had dropped. None of it seemed performative. He behaved the same whether anyone noticed or not. There is Chloe, Ava said. The sisters had quickly learned Ryan's daughter's name from a school banner listing student volunteers. Chloe stood beside her father, laughing about something. Ryan listened with complete attention. Not half attention. Not distracted attention. Complete attention. Natalie felt an unexpected ache in her chest. She remembered how often her own work demanded her time. How many meetings, flights, presentations. She loved her daughters deeply, yet seeing Ryan reminded her that presence itself was a gift. Mom, Emma said quietly. Can we talk to them? Natalie hesitated. Her instincts told her yes. Her nerves told her no. 15 years of unanswered questions had suddenly become real. Before she could decide, fate intervened. A strong gust of wind swept across the courtyard. Several raffle tickets lifted from a nearby table and scattered into the air. Children chased them immediately. Parents pointed and laughed. One ticket landed near Ryan's boots. Another slid beneath a bench where Ava was sitting. Ryan jogged over and picked up several tickets before they disappeared across the parking lot. Ava grabbed the one beneath her bench. When she stood, she nearly bumped into him. Sorry, Ava said. Ryan smiled warmly. You saved one too. She held up the ticket proudly. I am helping. Looks like we make a good team then. Ava beamed. Emma and Lucy quickly joined her. Within seconds, all three girls were standing beside him. Chloe walked over carrying another handful of tickets. The four children immediately began gathering the remaining papers together. Natalie watched the scene unfold. Something about it felt natural, comfortable, as if strangers were behaving like old friends. Then Emma's eyes drifted once more toward Ryan's forearm. The eagle tattoo remained visible beneath the rolled sleeve. This time she stepped closer, much closer. Mr. Mercer, she asked softly, where did you get that symbol? Ryan looked down at the tattoo for a moment. For the first time all afternoon, the smile faded from his face. Not from anger, not from discomfort, from memory. And when he finally answered, his voice carried a quiet weight that immediately captured everyone's attention. A very long time ago, he said. From some people I have never forgotten. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The cheerful sounds of the fundraiser seemed to drift farther away as Emma, Lucy, and Ava studied Ryan with renewed curiosity. Children often sense things adults missed, and all three girls could feel that his answer carried a story much bigger than the simple words he had chosen. Were they your friends? Lucy asked. Ryan nodded slowly. Some of the best people I ever knew. Ava tilted her head. Do you still see them? Ryan glanced toward the distant mountains beyond the school grounds. The late afternoon sun painted the horizon gold. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. Not as often as I would like, he said. It was an honest answer, though not a complete one. Chloe recognized that look immediately. Her father rarely talked about his past. Whenever questions wandered too far in that direction, he always found a way to redirect the conversation toward the present. She had learned years ago not to push. Natalie watched carefully from only a few steps away. Every answer raised new questions. His voice, his composure, the way his expression changed whenever the tattoo was mentioned. None of it felt rehearsed. None of it felt like someone seeking attention. If anything, Ryan seemed eager to move away from the subject entirely. Emma pointed toward the eagle symbol again. It must be important. Ryan smiled gently. It reminds me to be grateful. For what? Ava asked. For second chances. The answer struck Natalie harder than she expected. 15 years earlier, someone had given her a second chance at a future she almost lost. That single thought had followed her through every promotion, every achievement, every milestone. Sometimes success felt less like something she earned and more like something she had been entrusted to honor. Before she could say anything, a volunteer approached carrying a clipboard. Mr. Mercer, we need help moving a few tables before the raffle drawing. Ryan immediately nodded. Of course. The volunteer smiled. Thank you. I knew I could count on you. Ryan laughed softly. That usually means heavy lifting is involved. Several parents nearby chuckled. The volunteer was not wrong. Throughout the event, whenever something needed fixing, carrying, organizing, or cleaning, people seemed to call Ryan. Not because he was the strongest person there, because he never said no. As Ryan turned to leave, Emma suddenly spoke again. Wait. He stopped. Yes. Emma hesitated for a moment. Do you think people can disappear even when they are still here? Ryan looked surprised by the question. Natalie was equally caught off guard. What do you mean? Ryan asked. Emma shrugged. Sometimes important people disappear from stories. Nobody talks about them anymore. Then everyone forgets. Ryan studied her thoughtful expression. Then he smiled. The right people are never forgotten. The answer seemed simple, but Natalie felt a chill run through her. Because for 15 years she had been trying to remember someone whose name she never learned. Ryan excused himself and headed toward the tables. The moment he disappeared into the crowd, Emma turned back toward her mother. Mom. Yes. I think he is hiding something. Lucy nodded immediately. A big something. Ava crossed her arms with dramatic seriousness. Definitely a mystery. Natalie watched Ryan helping volunteers across the courtyard. Then her phone vibrated inside her purse. A message had arrived from an old contact she had not spoken to in years. The sender's name alone made her heart race. And as she opened the message, she realized the answers she had been searching for might be much closer than she ever imagined. The message contained only 7 words. Call me. It is about the eagle. Natalie stared at the screen as the sounds of the fundraiser faded into the background. The sender was General Thomas Hale, a retired officer she had not spoken with in nearly a decade. Out of all the people connected to the questions she carried for 15 years, he was one of the few who might actually know the truth. Her pulse quickened. Mom, Emma asked, is everything okay? Natalie forced a smile. Yes, sweetheart. But her mind was already somewhere else. She stepped away from the crowd and moved toward a quieter corner near the school library entrance. The call connected after a single ring. Natalie. The familiar voice sounded older than she remembered. General Hale. A brief silence followed. Then he spoke carefully. I received the photo you sent. Earlier that afternoon, before approaching Ryan, Natalie had secretly taken a picture of the tattoo from across the courtyard. At the time, she had not expected an answer so quickly. Do you recognize it? She asked. Yes. The response came immediately. Natalie closed her eyes. Then tell me what it means. Another pause. She could hear papers shifting in the background. Finally, he sighed. It belonged to a specialized unit that operated years ago. Very few people carried that version of the eagle. Natalie glanced across the courtyard toward Ryan. He was helping arrange folding chairs near the raffle stage. Nobody around him seemed aware of how important this conversation might become. And Ryan Mercer? She asked softly. Do you know him? The line became quiet again, long enough to make her nervous. Where did you meet him? Hale finally asked. At my daughter's school fundraiser. That sounds like Ryan. Natalie frowned. What does that mean? A faint chuckle came through the phone. It means if he is the man I think he is, he would rather spend an afternoon helping children than talking about himself. Natalie felt her chest tighten. Every observation she had made so far pointed in exactly that direction. General, please. Her voice softened. I need answers. The older man exhaled slowly. There are some stories people carry because they are proud of them. Ryan was never one of those people. Natalie listened carefully. Years ago, there was a young businessman traveling overseas. Smart, ambitious, full of plans. One unexpected situation changed everything. Several good people stepped forward when it mattered. Most never received public recognition. Ryan was among them. Natalie's heart pounded. She remembered being young, ambitious, traveling constantly. She remembered a difficult chapter she rarely discussed. She remembered surviving when many believed she would not. Was he there? She whispered. I cannot discuss details over the phone. Hale's voice grew gentle. But I will tell you this. If Ryan Mercer is the same man, then your success story and his story crossed paths a long time ago. Natalie looked toward Ryan again. He had just handed a bottle of water to an elderly volunteer before returning to work. No spotlight. No recognition. Just quiet kindness. General Hale spoke once more. There is a reason nobody talks about men like him. They usually ask people not to. The call ended a few moments later. Natalie lowered the phone slowly. Across the courtyard stood a man everyone saw as ordinary. Yet for the first time, she was beginning to understand that some of the most remarkable chapters in a person's life are the ones they never mention at all. The raffle drawing was scheduled to begin in less than 20 minutes, but Natalie Brooks could no longer focus on the event itself. Every answer seemed to create 3 new questions. Across the courtyard, Ryan Mercer continued working as if nothing unusual had happened. He stacked chairs, helped volunteers, carried supplies. The same man who might hold the missing piece of a story she had carried for 15 years was acting as though it were the most ordinary Saturday in the world. Mom, Emma said, stepping beside her. Are you going to talk to him? Natalie looked down at her daughter. Children had a way of cutting through confusion and finding the simplest path forward. I think I have to. Emma smiled. Good. Because mysteries are supposed to be solved. Natalie took a slow breath and began walking across the courtyard. Each step felt strangely difficult. She had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without hesitation. She had spoken before thousands of people. Yet approaching one quiet father at a school fundraiser somehow felt harder than all of it. Ryan was adjusting a folding table when he noticed her approaching. He immediately stepped aside. Ms. Brooks. Natalie smiled faintly. Please call me Natalie. Ryan nodded. Natalie. For a moment neither spoke. The sounds of the fundraiser drifted around them. Children laughed near the bounce house. A microphone crackled as volunteers prepared for the raffle. Somewhere nearby, a child dropped a tray of cookies and burst into giggles. Life continued moving forward. Natalie finally broke the silence. I spoke with someone today. Ryan's expression remained calm. Okay. Someone who recognized that symbol. She glanced toward the eagle tattoo. Ryan looked down briefly before returning his gaze to hers. There was no panic. No defensiveness. Only acceptance. I see. Natalie studied his face carefully. You are not surprised. Ryan smiled slightly. People ask questions sometimes. And do you answer them? Not usually. The honesty caught her off guard. Why? Ryan rested one hand on the table. His voice remained gentle. Because most stories belong to more people than just the person telling them. Natalie felt the weight of that answer immediately. It was not avoidance. It was respect. General Hale remembers you, she said quietly. For the first time, Ryan's expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough for her to notice. Tom Hale is a good man. He said some very kind things about you. Ryan chuckled softly. Then he is still exaggerating. Natalie shook her head. I do not think he was. A breeze moved across the schoolyard. The late afternoon sun had begun its slow descent, painting everything with a warmer glow. Ryan looked toward Chloe, who was helping younger students arrange raffle prizes. Pride softened his features. Natalie noticed it immediately. You love being her father. Ryan smiled without hesitation. It is the best thing I have ever done. The answer came too quickly to be rehearsed. Too sincerely to be anything but true. Natalie felt her throat tighten. Here was a man who might have accomplished remarkable things, yet the title he valued most was Dad. She looked back at the tattoo one final time. Ryan. Yes. Were you ever part of a story that changed someone else's life? He was quiet for several seconds. Then he gave an answer she would remember forever. Natalie, most people spend their lives wondering whether they mattered. If you get the chance to help someone and then quietly walk away, that answer takes care of itself. And in that moment, she became more certain than ever that she was standing in front of the man she had been searching for all along. The crowd gradually drifted toward the raffle stage, but Natalie remained where she was, unable to look away from Ryan Mercer. The golden light of late afternoon stretched long shadows across the schoolyard, and for a moment everything felt strangely still. General Hale glanced at Ryan, then at Natalie, as though he understood exactly what was happening. There is something you should know, he said quietly. Ryan immediately shook his head. Tom, the warning was gentle, but clear. General Hale smiled. You always do that. Do what? Ryan asked. You always make everyone else's story more important than your own. Nearby, Chloe looked down with a small smile. She had heard similar conversations before. Never the details. Just enough to know her father carried a past he rarely discussed. Natalie folded her arms lightly. Maybe it is time someone told the story correctly. Ryan let out a slow breath. Some stories belong in the past. Not all of them, Hale replied. The retired general looked toward Natalie. 15 years ago, there was a young entrepreneur traveling overseas to explore a business opportunity. Bright, determined, convinced she could solve every problem through hard work. Natalie felt her chest tighten. She knew exactly who he was describing. An unexpected situation interrupted those plans. Several people stepped forward to help. Most of their names were never published. Most never appeared in any report. They simply did what needed to be done and moved on. Ryan stared toward the stage where children were gathering for the raffle drawing. He said nothing. Hale continued. Years later, that young entrepreneur built one of the most successful companies in the country. Thousands of jobs. Millions of lives impacted. Entire communities benefited from her work. Natalie blinked away tears. Around them, the noise of the fundraiser seemed distant. What does that have to do with Ryan? Emma asked softly. General Hale smiled at the girl. Everything. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. Not from frustration. From humility. Hale pointed toward the eagle tattoo. That symbol represented a promise. A promise that service mattered more than recognition. Ryan took that promise seriously. Natalie looked at Ryan. You knew who I was the moment you saw me today, did you not? Ryan hesitated. Then he nodded once. I recognized your name. And you said nothing. There was nothing to say. Natalie shook her head in disbelief. Ryan, my entire life changed because of people like you. He met her gaze calmly. No, your life changed because of what you chose to do afterward. The answer hit harder than anything else she had heard that day. He genuinely believed it. There was no false modesty. No performance. He truly measured success by the lives other people built, not by the role he played in them. General Hale smiled warmly. That is why I came. Ryan raised an eyebrow. To embarrass me? To remind you that gratitude is not embarrassment. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Natalie took a small step forward. The mystery was finally gone. The questions that had haunted her for 15 years had found their answer. And standing before her was not a celebrity, a politician, or a powerful executive. It was a quiet single father who had spent years helping everyone around him while asking for nothing in return. The raffle drawing ended with cheers, applause, and excited children carrying prizes across the courtyard. But for Natalie Brooks, the noise seemed to fade into the distance. She stood quietly in front of Ryan Mercer, looking at the man she had spent 15 years searching for without ever knowing his name. The evening air had turned cooler. Strings of lights glowed softly above the schoolyard. Families began gathering their things and heading home. Yet nobody in the small circle surrounding Ryan seemed ready to leave. Emma stepped forward first, then Lucy, then Ava. The three sisters looked up at Ryan with the same curiosity that had started everything hours earlier. You really helped people and never told anyone? Ava asked. Ryan smiled. A lot of people help others every day without talking about it. Lucy frowned. But that is a big thing. Ryan shrugged gently. Being a good father is a bigger thing. Chloe looked up at him and laughed softly. That sounds exactly like something you would say. The group shared a quiet smile. Natalie felt tears gathering again. This time she did not try to hide them. For years she had imagined meeting the person connected to one of the most important moments of her life. In her mind, the reunion always happened somewhere dramatic. A conference room, a ceremony, a formal event. Instead, it happened at an elementary school fundraiser beside folding tables and raffle baskets. Somehow that felt right. Because Ryan himself was not dramatic. He was simply good. General Hale checked his watch and smiled. I should be going. Before leaving, he turned toward Ryan one last time. The world needs more people like you. Ryan shook his head. The world already has plenty. They just do not make headlines. The general laughed and walked away. As the last sunlight disappeared beyond the Colorado horizon, Natalie finally spoke. Ryan. Yes. Thank you. 2 simple words. Nothing more. Ryan looked at her for a moment. Then he nodded. You are welcome. There was no speech. No attempt to revisit the past. No demand for recognition. Just grace. Quiet grace. the kind that asks for nothing in return. Emma suddenly wrapped her arms around Ryan's side. Lucy followed. Ava joined a second later. The unexpected hug caught him completely off guard. Chloe laughed as her father stood frozen, surrounded by three determined little girls. "I think you have been adopted," Chloe said. Everyone laughed. Even Ryan. Natalie wiped away another tear. Not because she was sad, because some moments are too honest for anything else. Around them, the courtyard grew quieter. Parents loaded cars. Volunteers folded tables. The lights above the school flickered gently in the evening breeze. Ryan placed one arm around Chloe and smiled at the three sisters still clinging to him. For the first time all day, nobody asked another question. Nobody needed more answers. The mystery was over. The truth had finally found its way into the open. And in the silence that followed, everyone understood the same thing. Real character does not announce itself. Real dignity does not demand attention. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is simply the one who chooses kindness when nobody is watching. Under the soft glow of the school lights, surrounded by children, gratitude, and second chances, Ryan Mercer stood exactly where he had always wanted to be. Not celebrated, not famous, just present. And somehow, that made him unforgettable.